A thread through time. In the bustling city of Surat, India, where the hum of looms wove the rhythm of life, Arti Desai stood at the edge of her family's textile factory, staring at the silent machines. It was August 6, 2025, and the news had just broken. President Donald Trump had signed an executive order imposing a 50% tariff on Indian goods entering the United States. Textiles, pharmaceuticals, steel industries that were the lifeblood of millions were now caught in the crosshairs of a geopolitical storm, a retaliation for India's oil trade with Russia. The air in Surat was thick with dust and despair, and Arti's heart felt heavier than the bolts of silk stacked in the warehouse. Arti was no stranger to struggle. At 32, she had inherited the Desai textile empire, a legacy built by her grandfather, a man who had spun dreams from cotton and courage. The factory had survived wars, recessions, and the fickle tides of fashion, but this tariff felt different. It wasn't just a policy, it was a wound, slicing through the delicate threads that connected her workers to their livelihoods, her family to its heritage, and her country to the world. India's government had condemned the move, calling it unjustified, but words couldn't undo the damage. Prices were already spiking, orders were being cancelled, and whispers of layoffs hung like monsoon clouds. Arti's phone buzzed with a message from her cousin, Vikram, who worked in Mumbai's pharmaceutical industry. "This is a disaster. Our exports to the US are tanking. People can't afford medicines here, and now they won't there either. What do we do?" She didn't reply. What could she say? The world felt like it was unraveling, and she was just one woman holding a fraying thread. Across the ocean, in a small apartment in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Maya Carter sat at her kitchen table, staring at a bottle of pills she could no longer afford. The generic diabetes medication, sourced from an Indian supplier, had doubled in price overnight. Maya, a single mother of two, worked double shifts at a steel mill, a job she'd fought to keep after the industry took a hit from earlier tariffs. Now, with steel prices soaring due to the new executive order, her hours were being cut. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same policy that made her medicine unaffordable was also threatening her job. She pressed her fingers to her temples, fighting a headache that felt like the weight of the world. Maya had always believed in the promise of hard work. She'd grown up hearing stories of her grandfather, a steelworker who'd built a life from sweat and grit. But now, the world seemed to conspire against her. Her son, Jamal, needed new shoes for school, and her daughter, Lila, had dreams of college that felt increasingly out of reach. Maya's eyes drifted to a photo on the fridge. Her kid smiling at a community fair, holding cotton candy under a sky that seemed endless. That was before the tariffs, before the news was a daily. A salt of rising costs and global tensions. She wondered if hope was just a luxury she could no longer afford. In Surat, Arti walked through the factory, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. The workers, her extended family, as she thought of them, were gathered in small groups, their faces etched with worry. She caught the eye of Priya, a weaver who had been with the factory for 20 years. Priya's hands, calloused from years of threading looms, were clasped tightly in her lap. "RDG," Priya said, her voice trembling, "what will happen to us? My son's school fees, my husband's medicines, we can't survive if the factory closes." Arti knelt beside her, placing a hand on Priya's shoulder. "We won't let it come to that," she said, though her voice wavered with uncertainty. "We'll find a way." But how? The US was their biggest market, accounting for nearly half of their exports. The tariff would choke their revenue, and domestic demand couldn't fill the gap. Arti's mind raced, searching for solutions. She thought of her grandfather's stories, tales of resilience woven into the fabric of their family. He'd once told her about the Swadeshi movement, when Indians boycotted British goods to reclaim their economic power. Could there be a modern equivalent? A way to turn this crisis into an opportunity? That night, Arti sat in her office, surrounded by ledgers and memories. On her desk was a small wooden loom, a gift from her grandfather. She ran her fingers over its worn edges, remembering his words, "Fabric is more than thread, Arti. It's a story. Every weave carries the hopes of the hands that made it." She closed her eyes, letting the idea take root. What if they could tell a new story, one that connected people across borders, not divided them?
In Pittsburgh, Maya attended a town hall meeting, her first in years.
The room was packed with steelworkers, small business owners, and families like hers, all reeling from the tariffs' impact. A local activist, Carlos, stood at the podium, his voice steady but urgent. "These tariffs are sold as protecting American jobs, but they're hurting us," he said. "Steel prices are up, medicine prices are up, and our paychecks are shrinking. We need to demand better, not just for us, but for the people in India who are losing their livelihoods too."
Maya felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in months: purpose.
She raised her hand.
"What can we do?" she asked. "I'm a single mom. I can't afford my meds, and my job's on the line. But I don't want to just sit here and complain."
Carlos nodded, his eyes meeting hers.
"We start by talking, really talking.
Not just to politicians, but to each other. We need to understand how these policies connect us, from Pittsburgh to Punjab. Maybe we organize, maybe we protest, maybe we find ways to support each other directly."
Maya left the meeting with a flyer for a community group called Threads of Solidarity.
It was a grassroots effort to connect American workers with those affected overseas, to share stories and build alliances. She tucked the flyer into her pocket, feeling a flicker of hope.
Maybe she wasn't as powerless as she thought.
Artie's idea began to take shape in the form of a bold campaign, Weave the World. She envisioned a global movement to showcase the human stories behind the goods hit by tariffs. Textiles weren't just fabric, they were Priya's hands, her son's education, her husband's health. Pharmaceuticals weren't just pills, they were lives saved, families sustained. Steel wasn't just metal, it was the backbone of communities. Artie proposed a digital platform where workers, artisans, and consumers could share videos, letters, and art, revealing the human cost of trade wars and the resilience of those affected. She reached out to Vikram, who was skeptical but intrigued.
"This is ambitious, Artie," he said over a video call. "But how do we fund it? And who's going to listen?"
"We start small," Artie replied.
"We use social media, we partner with NGOs, we find allies.
There are people out there who care, consumers, activists, maybe even businesses who see the bigger picture."
Vikram sighed. "I hope you're right. Because if this fails, we're done." Artie didn't sleep that night.
She drafted a manifesto for Weave the World, pouring her heart into every word.
"We are not just goods. We are stories. We are the weavers, the healers, the builders. When you raise walls between us, you tear the fabric of our shared humanity. Join us to weave it back together." Maya joined Threads of Solidarity, attending weekly meetings where members shared news clippings, personal stories, and ideas for action. One evening, a guest speaker from an international labor group showed a video from India.
A woman named Artie Desai, standing in a textile factory, speaking about the impact of the tariffs. Maya watched, transfixed, as Artie described the workers' fears, their dreams, and her vision for Weave the World. The camera panned to a weaver, Priya, who spoke of her son's hope to become a doctor, now threatened by the factory's uncertain future. Maya felt tears prick her eyes.
Priya's story could have been hers.
The distance between Pittsburgh and Surat suddenly felt smaller, the tariffs not just a policy but a force tearing at families like hers and Priya's. She signed up for the Weave the World platform, uploading a video of her own. In it, she spoke of her kids, her job, and the medicine she could no longer afford. "We're not enemies," she said, her voice steady. "We're people, trying to live, trying to hope. Let's find a way to help each other." Artie's campaign gained traction faster than she'd expected.
Videos poured in from India: textile workers, pharmacists, steelmakers, all sharing their stories. Then, unexpectedly, contributions came from abroad. A farmer in Brazil, hit by similar tariffs, spoke of his struggling cooperative.
A nurse in the UK shared how rising drug prices affected her patients. And then there was Maya Carter, whose video from Pittsburgh went viral. Artie watched it late one night, her heart swelling with a mix of sorrow and solidarity. Maya's words echoed her own: "We're not enemies." The platform became a tapestry of voices, each thread a story of resilience and loss. Artie organized virtual town halls, connecting workers across continents.
In one, Maya and Priya spoke directly, their faces side by side on a screen.
Priya shared how her son had drawn a picture of a loom, captioned, "My mother's magic." Maya showed a photo of her kids at the fair, their smiles a reminder of what she was fighting for. "We're stronger together," Maya said, and Priya nodded, tears in her eyes.
The movement caught the attention of journalists, activists, and even a few policymakers. In Washington, a coalition of labor unions and consumer groups began lobbying against the tariffs, citing the human cost.
In Delhi, Artie met with trade officials, urging them to negotiate exemptions for essential goods like pharmaceuticals. The Indian government, initially defensive, began to see the value of her campaign as a diplomatic tool, amplifying the voices of its people. But the real power lay in the grassroots. In Surat, Artie's workers rallied, creating a line of sustainable, tariff-free textiles for domestic markets, branded with the Weave the World logo. In Pittsburgh, Maya's group organized a boycott of companies profiteering from the tariff-driven price hikes, redirecting support to ethical businesses. Small victories began to stack up. A U.S. senator proposed a bill to ease tariffs on essential medicines, and an Indian startup partnered with Artie to distribute affordable generics to American consumers.
By October 2025, Weave the World had become a global phenomenon.
Artie and Maya met in person at a UN summit on trade and human rights, their embrace captured by cameras and shared worldwide. They stood together at a press conference, Artie in a sari woven by Priya, Maya in a scarf sent by a Surat artisan.
"This isn't about politics," Artie said. "It's about people.
It's about the threads that connect us: hope, resilience, humanity."
Maya added, "We're not asking for charity. We're asking for fairness.
For a world where no one has to choose between medicine and food, between dreams and survival."
The tariffs remained, but their impact softened as governments and businesses felt the pressure of a united global voice. Artie's factory stayed open, hiring back workers and innovating new markets. Maya's medication became affordable again through a cooperative deal with an Indian supplier. Priya's son enrolled in medical school, and Jamal got his new shoes.
In the years that followed, the world remembered Weave the World not just as a campaign, but as a turning point.
It showed that even in a fractured world, ordinary people could weave a new story, one of solidarity, not division.
Artie and Maya never forgot the moment they realized their struggles were shared, their hopes intertwined. They had taken a fraying thread and spun it into something unbreakable. And in Surat, in a quiet corner of the factory, Artie kept the wooden loom on her desk. It was no longer just a relic of her grandfather's legacy, it was a symbol of a world rewoven, one story at a time.